What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. The Oregon Ducks are 7-1 and ranked number 6 in the latest AP poll, and they're gearing up for a road trip to Iowa City, where the Iowa Hawkeyes await them at Kinnick Stadium. Got an awesome episode in store for you guys. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by the Derman Law Firm PC. Attorney Jacob Y. Derman is a car accident lawyer who fights against the insurance companies for injured Oregonians. If you've been in a motor vehicle accident, call or text Jacob directly at 541-241-6470. That's 541-241-6470. Jacob was born in Medford, raised in Bend, went to college here in Eugene, and now takes cases across every county in Oregon. He's also a diehard Ducks fan. He hasn't missed a single game in person, home or away, every season. It's Tuesday, so you know what that means. It is time for another Tuesday TED Talk with our man, Ted Leroux of that show out west, and a contributor over at Scoop Duck on 3. Ted, how are we doing, man?
Doing great. Coming off the bye week, and now it is the sprint to the finish. 4 games to go for the Ducks in this season. It is, man, I can't wait. I cannot wait for the month of November. Every single one of these games is gonna be a different kind of test. I think for Oregon, of course. I'm sure we'll talk about this Iowa game coming up, and that's certainly going to test the physicality at both lines of scrimmage for the Ducks. But we know it's, really working towards those 2 West Coast rivalry games at the end of the year, and got to continue to improve, got to continue to play your best. So I'm very interested to see how this team's coming off of a bye week. Last time they came off a bye week resulted in their only loss of the year. Now, given to the number 2 team in the country, but still, I cannot wait to see how this team responds. So all is good over here in the Midwest, which is where the Ducks are going to be this Saturday.
That's right. The Ducks are heading your way to the Midwest, Ted. We got Oregon versus Iowa, 12:30 p.m. Pacific kick on CBS. You'll have Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson, and Jenny Dell on the call. You said it there yourself, Ted. The month of November, it's really one of the best months in college football because we get to separate the contenders from the pretenders, as the saying goes. And Oregon's schedule certainly presents them an opportunity to do that. I do feel like one of the questions that I can't help but have loom large in my head for Oregon is just how are they going to come out this week? Are they going to be able to start fast coming off of a bye week? Because recent history shows us they have not been playing at their best when they've come off any sort of down period, right? Obviously, you have the Indiana game coming off of the bye, and then you had the Rose Bowl back in January. I don't know if Dan Lanning took the Kenny Dillingham approach of giving his team the entire week off. I don't know if you saw that one circulating the other day, but there's got to be some kind of code that they can crack, the coaching staff can crack to get these guys to come out firing because you're on the road again.
Well, what's interesting about what happened against Indiana, remember the Hoosiers had a bye week too. What's interesting about this week? Iowa had a bye week last week as well. So sometimes you get a little bit of an advantage if the other team is playing the week before. You have the extra week of preparation to kind of get ready for an opponent. But in both of these bye weeks this season, Oregon and their opponent has had 2 weeks to get ready for this matchup. So maybe they don't get the extra advantage with that. But we'll see how this team, how the energy is kind of coming off of this bye week. The performance against Wisconsin, where it was not great, but also we talked about the weather a few shows ago and how that kind of impacted things as well. But it's coming into the year, I was saying something like, I don't know where the ceiling is, and it's a little bit of an unknown. It's a fear of the unknown, but it's also exciting because I didn't know maybe how high the ceiling was. Now I kind of look at November. I'm like, I don't know. And we talked about this before in a previous show. I don't know how good this team is. Are they good? Are they great? Are they elite? We just don't know. We've seen them be elite. We've seen them be okay. We've seen kind of all different personalities, so to speak, of this Oregon team so far. And now we're going to see, what the ultimate personality of this team is here through the month of November. So I kind of look around. I'm not sure what to expect this weekend in Iowa City from this Oregon team. I'm optimistic that they're going to come out and take advantage of maybe some of the mismatches that they have in their favor. But then you look to the back half of the year, and I should say the back half of this 4-game stretch. USC and Washington are going to be no cakewalk either, because we know those are going to be. I mean, Oregon's got the target on their back, for those games, those West Coast rivalries. So it's man, I want to sit down and I want to watch the movie. It's like waiting 3 years for the new Stranger Things to come out. I've heard so much about it. Season 5, this thing's going to happen. And, we've got this 2 weeks that's bye week. This is like, I just want to sit down and watch the show. I just want to sit down and watch the movie and see what happens. That's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
You want to talk about big levels or high levels of anticipation, Ted? Have you ever heard of a video game called Grand Theft Auto 6? That thing is never coming out. Never. But no, I think you make a good point. Like, you just want to see not only how this game plays out, but how Oregon continues to evolve or not evolve, because I think that's something that I find myself asking is just what kind of version of Oregon are we going to get week to week? And I think there's some kind of a middle ground here between those inconsistencies, maybe telling us, hey, this is a younger team, a newer team. You have experience, but they haven't all played together super long. So maybe that's just a natural byproduct of the combination of all the ingredients that you put into this, to composing a roster. But then also it's like, we're in November. Like, maybe Oregon just isn't an elite team. And I'm not saying that on like, I'm going to die on that hill. I just think that we've seen enough of the season where it's like, okay, I think you can acknowledge the areas for growth, some of the factors at play, while also just maybe saying, hey, this might just be what you got because you've had a lot of time to show it. But at the same time, you also have to take all of that with a grain of salt, because maybe this Oregon team hasn't peaked. And I think that what we're hoping to see, obviously, if you're an Oregon fan, you're hoping to see it this way, that this Iowa game can be a good step in the direction of finding that peak this month.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what they find, like you said, from the results of this Iowa game. This is not going to be a game, where we come in and, maybe one of the results is, okay, Dante goes out there and he maybe gets back to be the number 1 and they're number 2 in the Heisman race right now, because I think the passing, the secondary for Iowa, they've really been progressing this season. I remember going back to last year, I was like, oh, they're kind of giving up a good amount of big plays. This year, early in the year, maybe you had a little bit of that as well, but they've really locked down and they're playing Iowa football. For me, I think one thing that we're really going to find out about this Oregon team, how tough are they against maybe the toughest culture in the Big Ten, if not all of college football? How the offensive line and the defensive line, how are they going to fare? I mean, Iowa's got the highest graded run blocking O-line in the country, according to Pro Football Focus. So I am so intrigued. That's one of the most intriguing matchups to me in this game, is Iowa's just been able to run everybody over, bull everybody over, run the ball really well with Kamari Moulton, Xavier Williams, and some of those stable of running backs that they have this season, along with kind of that read and RPO game that's a new layer with Mark Gronowski this season. But I want to see how Bear holds up. I want to see how Amari holds up against some of these great guys in the middle, like Logan Jones, Jennings Dunker. I mean, there's all sorts of all Big Ten players, probably future NFL players among this Iowa offensive line. So, and like if that group, the D line specifically, if they're playing really good, and even if it's a stalemate, I think it's going to be tough for Iowa to move the football in this game. So what I want to find out specifically from this first game is just how tough this team is at the offensive line and the defensive line, because I think that's how you're going to need to beat them. You might need to beat Iowa at their own game, because I don't know how easy it is going to get some explosive plays over the top. I could be very wrong. Dante could go out there and throw for 250 and 300, but that's kind of the way it seems to me, and that's maybe what we may find out.
That battle at the line of scrimmage is going to be a fun one to watch. When I think about that, I think about last year's game against Wisconsin. That was a heck of a battle out there in Madison. Right. We got a little bit of news that we can maybe kick things off with here, Ted. Obviously, over the weekend, I think it was late Sunday night, news broke that Oregon defensive back Jaleel Florence intends to enter the transfer portal and is no longer with the team. That comes from Hayes Fawcett. And This was confirmed by Lanning on Monday evening during his presser, saying, quote, "I'm thrilled with Jalil's contribution to our team. He was a positive teammate. I'm wishing him nothing but the best. He was looking for a reset, and I wish him a great future." So I think just for me, I really wasn't that surprised at this news,
Yeah.
Ted. I think it was kind of heading in this direction. Maybe not at this point in the season, but this was kind of the next step for Florence. He just a tough break for a guy who signed with Oregon in the 2022 class. He was the recruitment that kind of went viral after Landon got hired, won a national championship, and then was walking off the field and called Jalil, because at that point he wasn't committed to Oregon. He had been committed but decommitted, and then it was Oregon and SC. But for the way his journey kind of got started, got to Oregon and played a pretty good role right away. That knee injury on the tail end of the 2023 season, I think, just really set him back, and
Right.
he ultimately found himself getting passed up by some other cornerbacks. So not a huge surprise, but I do know that there were a lot of Duck fans out there that were hoping he would kind of find himself again at Oregon.
Yeah, it was that was one of the questions coming into the year with all these bevy of defensive backs. Could we get Jalil Florence returning to that form that you talked about in 2023, where he was one of the better defensive backs in this team? I think there's a hypothetical situation out there where if he doesn't suffer that injury and if he's healthy, first of all, maybe they're able to defend a little bit better against the pass in the Pac-12 championship in Vegas. That's maybe bullet point number one. And I think bullet point number two is Oregon might not go to the portal and get a guy like Jabbar Muhammad because Jalil Florence is kind of occupying that spot. And then, Chris Hampton does what he does and brings in this elite recruiting class. And it's tough when you get guys like a Brandon Finney coming in. You bring in a transfer in Theron Johnson, and you look at what Ife Obadegwu and how he's been able to play. And it's just that's what happens, when you acquire talent the way Oregon has in the secondary. You have somebody's going to be the odd man out when you're that deep. And it's especially a guy that's started at this level of football before, and that's had success at this level of football. He's going to want to do that again instead of, sitting behind some true freshmen right now. So there's going to be somebody out there that's going to get Jalil Florence, and there's going to be a defensive coordinator. There's going to be a secondary coach that's going to be very happy with this addition. So I think he can still play power two football. I still think he can be a very good defensive back. It's just, man, the talent at Oregon is just loaded. It's just loaded right now. I remember somebody at a press conference asking Dan about this in September, and I kind of talked about it on my program in September. Kind of these same bullet points. It'd be like, it's just right now it just looks too deep. It looks too deep for somebody like Jalil to consistently get in that lineup. I mentioned Finney and Ife, and you've seen what Naeem Offord has done maybe in the second half of the season, getting a lot more reps, and Sione Lalea with his size has been out there significantly. So I'm curious to see if we're going to see this at maybe some other positions. There could be some other candidates maybe after the season is over to do this, because there's just, when you recruit at a top 3, top 5 level, you're going to maybe have some of these veterans that are maybe a little bit banged up, that have had some injury problems, tougher to get back on the field, that are maybe going to get passed up by these younger players. And that's just the fact of the matter. And that's okay. And that's totally fine. Obviously, you want to see these guys go out somewhere else and play really good football. I think one pretty good example of that, Roderick Pleasant. I mean, he was a 4-star corner from a couple of years ago, and he's over there, I believe, is in the starting lineup. He's been starting most of the season over at UCLA. So he's been having a decent amount of success, or at least playing a good amount over there in Westwood. So, and I think that's kind of what everybody hopes for Jalil at this point. And I think he's going to find a role. He's probably going to find a role with a pretty good team out there. And I think someone's going to be very happy that they get a guy like Jalil Florence.
Having transfers like this is just a byproduct of how Oregon's been operating. And the important thing to remember is that to this point, at least in the Dan Lanning tenure, they haven't lost a starter to the transfer portal. Not a lot of schools can say that, Ted. So I think that's something that we definitely need to keep in mind here, but definitely wishing Jalil all the best wherever he lands. Let's dig into this Iowa matchup a little bit more here, Ted. Not a team that is known for having a prolific passing attack. I'm looking at some of the numbers here. They're just averaging 132.6 yards per contest. They have 5 touchdowns through the air, and they have 5 interceptions. So this is a team that is known for running the ball 185.3 yards per game and 4.8 yards a pop. So certainly a team that likes to run the ball at you. in that last game they had against Penn State, which was a too close for comfort 25-24 win at home for a team that does not have a head coach, obviously following the firing of James Franklin. Mark Gronowski, 9 carries for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So this certainly seems like the best runner that the Ducks will have faced at the quarterback spot to date. So I'm interested to see how guys like Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uyunglele play this week. It's going to be a huge day for Amari Washington. Can Bear Alexander continue? Bear Alexander could very well make himself some money in this Iowa matchup.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 edge guys, Mateo and Tatum. That's a big factor for me because obviously they're great in the straight ahead run game. With Moulton, their top running back right now, who's got 435 yards. Averaging over 5 yards a pop. And he's really good. Even dating back to last year, he was pretty good as well. But man, you got to be able to contain Mark Gronowski and what he can do with this RPO game, this read game. It's a new layer to Iowa's offense. I mean, there were so many people in Hawkeye country, even dating back, a couple of years ago when they had the statue back there in Spencer Petras, not mobile at all. They had a more mobile quarterback behind him. I'm like, let's get some mobility. Let's get some mobility, and see if that can kind of help the offense a little bit. It didn't really happen, and then you kind of have what you had last year with Cade McNamara to kind of start the year. And, there wasn't a lot of mobility at that position. Now you bring in a guy in Mark Gronowski. He's played a ton of football. All he's did is win. I mean, 2 national titles at South Dakota State at the FCS level, but he's just so smart. And when he's pulling the ball, when he's running, he's not like fast. I think that's one thing. He's just smart and he's deceptively fast, and he just kind of pulls the ball at the right time and he makes the right read at the right time. It helps when you have the offensive line that you have in front of them. As I mentioned before, it's the best probably out there in terms of run blocking and creating running lanes right now. But for these guys on the edge, Tatum's been great at just being in the right spot at the right time all year long. They got to stay assignment sound. They got to bring the quarterback to the inside. They can't get sucked in and allow Gronowski to now get on the perimeter where it's him, against a safety, a corner 7 yards down the field is the first time that someone could touch him. So that's a huge key for me, because if Iowa just pounds the interior run game and they keep on doing it, and then you see these edges get sucked in because they're so used to that happening, and all of a sudden Gronowski goes around the end for 50 yards, that could be a big swing. That could be a big difference in the game. So staying assignment sound on the edge, everything to the inside to allow as much of your personnel as possible to be able to bring down the quarterback is huge. I just pulled up the stat: 11 rushing touchdowns for Mark Gronowski this season. Now, a lot of those, of course, are short yardage, but it's crazy to see a quarterback with that many rushing touchdowns so far this season. So, yeah, and you mentioned the interior. You mentioned Bear Alexander. You mentioned Amari Washington. I mean, those guys are going to be they're going to be one of the biggest keys because of what Iowa can do in the run game. Like, that's been the problem with the Hawkeyes, kind of dating back to, of course, all the jokes with the Brian Ferentz era and all that. They've improved a lot since then. So if you're kind of used to, you still kind of gotten that in your head. They've gotten a lot better in this year and 3 quarters so far with Tim Lester as the offensive coordinator. But they still can't push the ball down the field. They don't have guys. They don't have talent. I mean, they brought in Sam Phillips from the portal, and he's pretty good, but they still got, Jacob Gill, Reese Vanderzee. I mean, they're okay, middle of the road, probably Big Ten wide receivers. The guy that you really need to be able to contain is Caden Eugene on the outside. I mean, he's just an Iowa playmaker, man. I mean, he was that guy. It seemed like he was growing in one of those cornfields out there, because it seems like that's just the type of guy that they have had over the years. That quick, speedy receiver, can make a difference in the return game as well. You can send it on a reverse and he can just find the seam and take it to the house. So that's really, if you contain Caden Eugene and the big plays that he can make on the perimeter, I feel like Oregon has a really good defensive game plan. Bring extra bodies into the box. Trust Finney on the outside. trust Iffy on the outside on an island, because those guys have the talent advantage over the athleticism advantage over the guys that they're going to be lined up against. Force Iowa to throw the football and beat you in these one-on-one matchups. Bring some extra guys in the box. We know how Tosh Lapointe, Oregon, has had Dylan Thieneman play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. We know how good Aaron Flowers has been reading the run and getting up there and making plays. So that's, I think, that's got to be the game plan and how they're going to put this thing together. And if they do that, if they contain the run game, I think it's going to be hard for Iowa to maybe put a ton of points on the board in this game.
The game plan is pretty simple here. I mean, not that either of us are head coaches, Ted, but if you can stop or at least limit the run, you want to go into this game if you're the Oregon staff saying, Mark Gronowski, beat us with your arm. I'm looking at some of these numbers here that are just really interesting. The 11 touchdowns on the ground, like you said, for Gronowski, are definitely a big one. He's number 2 on the team in rushing with 76 carries, which is number 2 from a volume standpoint, for 313 yards, 4.1 yards a carry. But the receptions here, the receiving leaders, that Caden Weegan, like you said, 16 catches, and that's number 1 on the team. He has 1 touchdown through the air, and some of these other guys that are the leaders in yards don't even have a touchdown yet. So, I mean, I'm not saying that to disrespect their players by any means, but it's just like that just shows you. I feel like it's pretty fair to say that they're one-dimensional, and that should, in theory, make them easier to beat. But you still got to line it up. You got to go against that offensive line that is among the very best in the Big Ten and nationally. So I think this is something that Oregon has the personnel. This is a game that Oregon has the personnel to win. I love your point about having some of these really talented defensive backs. Just put them out there on an island, and let's see if we maybe see more of a Dylan Williams or some more rotation at linebacker. I think you go with the guys that you're most comfortable with, but you're going to need them in that home stretch, especially if you're going to make a playoff run here. So I think that thing's set up pretty well for Oregon defensively. What I'm going to be interested to see is how Oregon can approach this game on offense, and how Dante looks and how some of these other playmakers look. They got to feed the studs, and we're going to talk some more about feeding the studs in just a second here. But I got a question for you, Duck fans. Are you going to an Oregon game this season? If you are, the Oakway Lifestyle Center at the corner of Oakway and Coburg is the destination for Duck fans. Whatever you're looking for, they've got it all. Get a bite to eat at Sun River Brewing or P.F. Chang's. Check out shops like Lululemon or Nordstrom Rack. Need a place to stay? Book your lodging at the Hyatt Place at Oakway Center and visit their rooftop bar. The Oakway Lifestyle Center is walking distance from Autzen Stadium, has something for everybody, and is a great post-game place to celebrate another Duck victory. Max Torres of Scoop Duck on 3, back here with you on the Duck Dish podcast with my good friend Ted Leroux of That Show Out West. If you're enjoying the conversation, I strongly encourage you to head on over to scoopduck.com. Check us out, try us out. $1 gets your membership going, and you get a complimentary year of access to The Athletic. If you're a recruiting fan, we're also the place to be. Rivals just announced the addition of Greg Biggins, legendary icon of West Coast high school football and recruiting, good friend of mine that I've bumped into a fair share amount of times out here in SoCal, but the value of a membership just continues to go up. So strongly encourage you guys to head on over to scoopduck.com and try us out. Ted, let's talk about this offense here as the Ducks gear up for another road trip. Obviously, the big discussion point right now is Dante Moore, who got knocked out of the Wisconsin game. We saw his nose was bleeding and everything, but after hearing Lanning talk these past couple of availabilities, sounds like he's good to go here, and we should see business as usual for Dante. Big opportunity for him in this offense to bounce back.
Yeah, huge opportunity for him right now. So it's great to be able to have him back, and maybe a very well-placed bye week with Dante getting knocked out of that Wisconsin game. His ability to kind of heal didn't sound like it maybe took a ton of time for him to heal so going forward. But yeah, you talk about this offense right now. This is just a really good Phil Parker defense. Yet again, I talked about how the secondary, I think, has continued to get better as the season has gone on. I mean, the front seven it's an Iowa front seven. It's just really sound. It's really good. It's deep. There's a lot of just good, well-coached players in there. So I'm really curious to see how Oregon is going to approach this. Are they going to be like, well, let's try to get explosive early on. Let's try to put some points on the board, get Iowa's offense behind early because maybe they don't have as good of ability to come back. I say that, yet they came back 21-10 late in the third quarter against Penn State, and they ended up winning 25-24. But overall, I think the way that Iowa plays, it's going to be tough for them to come back. You get them down by 2 possessions, middle of the third quarter or something like that. So is Oregon kind of try to have Dante really stretch the field to try to get those big plays and try to get those explosives and make this game a faster tempo, which does not suit the Iowa style? Or is Oregon going to line up and be like, I think we got to maybe beat these guys at their own game a little bit. We got a big offensive line, especially the interior with Poncho and Pregnon. They've been great run blockers this whole year. You've got Jordan Davison coming off back-to-back games. I think there's a decent probability that we could see that Oregon knows that they're going to have to win the physicality at the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to play that type of game. It wouldn't surprise me to see Jordan Davison go over 100 yards for the third consecutive game. Yeah, I'm not saying it'd be 150, but Katron Allen recently for Penn State carried it, I think 28 times for 145 in a recent matchup. So I think it's been proven at least fairly recently that a team, if they kind of stick to the run, if they believe in the run, then that can be something that you can gain on this Iowa defense. So and that's kind of like, I was watching this Wisconsin game. I'm like, man, when this offense really gets in a groove and they really get confident, these Oregon offensive linemen, they can mash. I mean, Jordan Davison is quickly becoming one of the more reliable options. I mean, he's always falling forward. He's running with a ton of lean. And, I wrote a whole piece about that on Scoop Duck, and I talked about it on my show. So I've raved about him very recently. So, that could maybe be something to wear down Iowa's defense as time goes on. So the approach, and I think we're going to find that out fairly early in the game, exactly how they're going to want to take advantage of some of these matchups. But when I look at Oregon's offense, and this is kind of the game as a whole, I think this game is going to be played in a phone booth a little bit. It's going to be physical. It's going to be everything you might expect from a game at Kinnick Stadium. But I think the thing is, Oregon can play that kind of game. They can play in the mud a little bit. Hell, they can maybe even excel in the mud. You see what happened, in the rainstorm last week against Wisconsin, how they adjusted to that a little bit later on during the game. You saw how they played against Wisconsin last season. I think they've proven that, hey, when a game gets a little bit ugly, they can still play that kind of game. So, and I think that they're going to maybe lean into that a little bit and play that type of physical football game up front. But in the end, I just think Oregon's just got more talent, both on offense and defense. So if this game is kind of played a little bit tighter, it just seems like Dante, maybe some of these pass catchers, maybe some of the players on defense, it just seems like there's more path to victory for the Ducks in this one. But trust me, it is not going to be easy out there.
When you mentioned, Ted, playing in a phone booth, I don't know why my mind went here, but there's videos on social media of phone booth boxing, and it is about as close quarters as you would think it would be. But that could be the perfect image that we're looking for with this Oregon-Iowa game. Yeah. I think Oregon definitely has the running back depth to wear this Iowa team down. Maybe we'll see Jalen Lamar make a return. He hasn't played in a little bit as he's been dealing with an injury. We saw Jordan Davison go over 100 yards, and Noah Whittington was right there last time against Wisconsin. I think it was about 97 yards. So you certainly have the personnel to make that happen. And then to your point, just about the talent, I think that everyone can look at this matchup on paper and say, okay, Oregon has more talent, but they need to avoid beating themselves. Feed the studs, get your best players the ball more often than you probably have been. I think Decorium Moore definitely needs some more touches than he's probably been getting. You could probably say the same for Kenyon Sadiq as well. And it does feel like I'm splitting hairs by saying that. But if Oregon finds themselves in a close game, I think that's a very easy way that they could get themselves out of a hole. But if you build an early lead on this Iowa team, their offense, one that doesn't necessarily strike quickly, given their reliance on the run, I think this could go well for Oregon. I do have, we'll have some predictions coming up on Scoop Duck later on this week for score predictions, but I'm going to spoil it here a little bit. I did pick Oregon to win, but I didn't have it by the largest margin of victory, just because, like we said at the front of the show, the top of the show, I don't know what version of Oregon we're going to be getting. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, they're going to bounce back from, some of the offensive struggles they've been having. We know that they were in the rain. They could find themselves in a little bit of rain this weekend. I was looking at the forecast yesterday morning, but I don't know. I feel like I should give the offensive staff the benefit of the doubt. Dante Moore is a hell of a player. It's just been a very hot and cold, touch and go, time on offense this year, at least compared to last season, Ted. But it is Dante Moore's first season as the full-time starter at Oregon, so I think that's a natural byproduct.
Yeah, I know. It's I was just checking the spread at this one is right in an interesting spot at 6.5 right now in favor of Oregon, and that's kind of the way that I see this one. It's gonna be a one possession game. It's gonna be a close game leading down to it. But here's the thing: having watched Big Ten football as long as I have, specifically in these last couple of years, you get Iowa into a close game at home, they just find a way. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes it's a blocked field goal, and sometimes it's a return or whatever it is. But they just find a way, just like they found a way to come back from double digits in the second half to beat Penn State earlier this season. There's just some voodoo out there. So, if you're Oregon, you'd love to go into the fourth quarter. This is maybe around a double-digit game. But yeah, this thing is one possession. That's just how this team has been coached and how it's kind of been formulated, that, hey, if we can get to a 7-point game, a 6-point game in the fourth quarter, all we got to do is not make mistakes. And that's the thing. That's Iowa. They do not beat themselves. I remember a couple of years ago, I was saying Iowa just seems to be like they sit back there knowing that they're not going to make mistakes, and they're just going to patiently wait for you to make a mistake. And when you make that mistake, they capitalize. Special teams, defense, whatever it is. Like, Oregon needs to win. They can't let special teams flip this game. Like, when I look at what Iowa does, scoring on defense, scoring on special teams. When you have an offense, even though they're much better under Tim Lester than they were before, but when you have an offense that still isn't very dynamic, and then you're in opposition, like Minnesota, for example, they allowed a defensive touchdown, a special teams touchdown, and that's what allowed that game to really get out of hand. You just give them that. I mean, you're giving them essentially 2 extra possessions that way without the offense taking the field at that point. And you can't give anything to Iowa, because if you give, they're going to take. They're going to take, and they're going to capitalize on it, plain and simple. So kind of like that same style that I talked about 2 years ago. I think they still fit in that same mold. I feel like if this game, if Oregon can play clean, they're very sound defending the return game, I think that takes a lot away from maybe the shortcuts that Iowa could take on their way to a victory. Because if both of these teams are walking side by side down the same path, like we said before with talent, I mean, Oregon is a faster team. They're a more athletic team. There's advantages that they have where if we're taking the same path, Oregon's just they've got longer legs. They're going to get there a lot sooner. Where Iowa maybe needs to find a way to take some of the shortcuts, which are the special teams, which is the defense and stuff like that. So can't give anything to them, especially on the road, especially in their house. I think that's the main thing that Dan Lanning has to instill into this team. Can't turn the ball over. Need to stay in your lanes of special teams against the return game. If they're able to accomplish even that, that's going to be a big chunk of what they have to do to be victorious on Saturday.
Yeah, Caden Weegan, I'm just looking at some of the numbers here, Ted, on special teams. 2 punt returns for a touchdown this year and 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. And flipping it over to the other side of the coin, Oregon special teams, as far as returns go, has not really been an asset for them this year. And I don't say that saying like, oh, well, of course you should be ripping off, massive punt returns left and right. Special teams isn't easy. But given the caliber of playmaker that Oregon has, I talked about this with Kenyon Barner last week. I feel like that there's a little bit more left to be desired there. And maybe this week is the week that they break things open and get a couple of returns for touchdowns. Obviously, I don't think the Ducks have had that since the Boise State game last year when Noah and Tez both housed one. Just some of my final remarks here, Ted. I think when I look at this game, this is a grow-up opportunity for Oregon, specifically along the lines of scrimmage. And you could also say for Dan Lanning as well, having not coached at Kinnick Stadium before, Dante Moore given a raucous environment out there that he's going to be going in. So I think that however this game unfolds, Oregon's going to grow up a little bit in one way or another. Maybe it's some tough love. Maybe it's passing the test. But I'm just excited for this game, man. It's a 12:30 kickoff out here on the West Coast, so not too early. You'll still be able to watch the rest of the slate there after the Ducks wrap up against the Hawkeyes, and this will be an opportunity for them to get the month started off on the right foot. This is the most pivotal month in college football. You got a lot of schools out there that are looking for coaches, and guys are flipping and decommitting and all that stuff. But Oregon's just trying to stay steady as she goes, and they're hoping that this maybe paves the way for a postseason run.
This game's all about, you hear it all the time in March with the basketball tournament. It's all about survive and advance. Sometimes, it's not going to be pretty. Sometimes you're not going to have your 3-point jump shot or this or that. And, you just get a tough matchup and a tough battle, and you just got to survive and advance to the next round. I think that's where Oregon is sitting at right now. So as long as they kind of take care of business and the things we laid out, I think we both agree that they've got the rosters to be able to go on the road and get this win, but it's not going to be easy. And then kind of set themselves up for where I think they can maybe take a little bit more of a deep breath, and maybe they can play games a little bit more within their comfort zone, the way they want to play. Of course, with Minnesota at home, and then the West Coast teams where they maybe have a similar type of philosophy and how they're structured and how they're playing football out there. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a fun matchup. I can't wait to see this contrast of styles. Styles make fights, and it's gonna be a hell of a fight.
It's going to be a dogfight, it sounds like, out there in Iowa City. Number 6 Oregon against Iowa on Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody has a tremendous week. If you guys want to find more of Ted, you can follow him on X at Ted on the Ducks. You can read him over on scoopduck.com and check out that show out west if you want to see more of him on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me at Torres Sports and subscribe to the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel. And do me a favor and share the show with everybody you know. A big thank you to Ted for coming on, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.